In this video today, I'm going to share with you how I managed to deploy a Yii2 application to InfinityFree. And the whole process is much easier, and it will depend on the actual size of your project that you want to upload. So I'll just take you through this whole documentation that I created inside my blog. I'll share the link of this blog in the description. So I'll just take you through the whole process, and we'll skip this part for installing Yii2 basic locally, since you already have a project created on Yii2. If your application uses a database, you need to make sure that you transfer your whole database to InfinityFree. So I'll just show you the example. So in this part, and I'll just go to InfinityFree, and I'll just go to the, if you just log into your account, let me just go home, then I'll show you the whole thing. Let me just go to home. So if you log into your account, you'll be allowed to create 3 accounts, and an account will have more than one, can have more than one, okay, what do we call them? Domain. Yeah, more than one domain. So the main account here, we have the fortune.waze.com, and we have these other domains which are, I'm not sure of the name, let me just check it on the control panel. Yeah, they are called add-on domains. Yep. So if I just go back to the main account, you can see we have, so this is the main domain, and then these other ones are called add-on domains. So what I'm going to do next is to, if your application has a database, or it uses a database, what you're going to do, let me just show you an example of what you're supposed to do to make sure that you have your database hosted in InfinityFree. So I'll just go to my local host, and then I'll go to my phpMadmin, and I'll just show you what you'll do for your database that you want to use inside InfinityFree for your application. So let me just check one of the systems. So for example, if this is my whole database, you just go to this part for export, and then you'll export the whole database here. So I'll just export it. You'll have it inside your downloads. So what you're going to do, you just go to InfinityFree, and then you have this section for my SQL databases. So just click that, and then you'll add a database here. So create a database, and then you'll give it a name. So let me just say it was POS. Let me just name it as POS. Then create the database. So after creating the database, the next thing you're supposed to do is to just go to the phpMadmin of that database that you've created. So all the databases that you have created will have their phpMadmin dashboards. So the one that we created is this one, which ends with POS. So just click on phpMadmin. So in this part, what we're going to do is to now import the database that we exported locally. So I'll just click it, just click the import, and then choose file, and then I'll just go to my downloads and look for POS, the actual MySQL file. It is this one. So just double click it, and it will be loaded. So the next thing you're going to do is to click go. The whole database will be imported inside InfinityFree. So now we are ready to use it. So if I go back to this section, we have the credentials for logging into the database, and we have our username and password, the host name, port, and the database name. What we're going to use is the name of the database that we created, which is this one. So after getting all these credentials, what you're going to do, I just have a sample of the project here that I'm supposed to use as an example. You just go to your configuration, and you find the db.php, and inside this section is where we are going to make the changes for the database. So I'll just change the host name to the one that we have been given from InfinityFree. So I'll just copy this host name, and then go back to the project and change the host name from localhost to the one that has been given from InfinityFree. So db name, I'll just go back to InfinityFree and check the db name, which is POS that we just created. I'll just copy that, and the next thing, and then paste it here. And for the username, you just copy the username that we've been given from InfinityFree, which is this. Just copy it and then paste it in your project, and then we have the password part. So this I won't share with you, but you just copy the password and then you paste it inside your project, and this will be complete. For the database connection, that will be all that you need to do, and then you just close that. You just save the file and then close that file. So the next thing you're supposed to do, let's just go to our notes, and then I'll show you what next you're supposed to do. If you have a database, you are going to configure this part. If you don't have, there's no need of creating a database inside InfinityFree. So now the next thing you're supposed to do is to create a root file htaccess. Since inside Yii2, all the Yii2 applications don't have index.php inside the root directory. They are located inside. If you're using the basic one, it is located inside the web directory, and if you're using the advanced one, I am not sure, I don't use the advanced version often, but you'll find it somewhere, but it's not inside the root directory. So what you're going to do, you just create a file and you name it as .htaccess. So in my case, I just created that as htaccess inside I just created it inside my root directory. And what you're going to do, I have this code that you're supposed to paste it inside that htaccess file, and this one will route all the traffic to the web directory where we have the index.php. So that's all this code is doing. And after creating that file, we have some changes we need to make so that we can push the whole code of our project inside GitHub. Since we need all the files that we are using locally to be available inside GitHub, and then GitHub will take the whole code and push it inside our InfinityFree account. So we need to make sure that all the .gitignore files are commented out. So in my case, if I just go to my project, I can just look at, if you look at my gitignore, the root gitignore file, I have commented out everything. So what you're going to do, just press Ctrl A and then press Ctrl /. That will, let me just show you an example. Let me just select all. If they are commented out already, what you're going to do, to uncomment them, just press Ctrl and /. That will uncomment all of them. But now in your project, I'm sure all of them, they are not commented out. So what you're going to do, just press Ctrl A to select everything inside the .gitignore file, and then press Ctrl /. That will comment out everything. And then I'm sure in our Yii2 applications, we don't have only one gitignore file, So you just need to find all the .gitignore files and comment out everything that they have, all the content inside them. So I'll just go to the sidebar. If you're using VS Code, you just click the sidebar where we have the search, and then inside the search, what you're going to do is to just type .gitignore. And this will give you all the .gitignore files in your whole project. So we'll just go one by one and comment them out. In my case, I already commented them out. So what I'm going to do, I'll just show you all the files that we have, and you can see I already commented everything. So if you just go, just make sure you comment everything inside .gitignore files. I'll just comment this out too. I just forgot to comment it out. And after doing that, this makes sure that all the files of your project will be uploaded to GitHub. So these .gitignore files are the ones that will make your project to work or not to work. So make sure all the files, the vendor directory, actually the vendor directory is supposed to be available inside GitHub, the whole thing. Since you're not supposed to run Composer inside your InfinityFree account, you don't have access to the terminal. So what you're going to do next, after having everything set up, we have one thing remaining that we need to make sure that your project have. That is, you need to go to your the next thing you're supposed to do is to now add the domain name add your domain to InfinityFree. The next thing you're supposed to do is to add your domain to InfinityFree, making sure that you have your project ready. I'm sure when you are to do this, you already have a project ready. So those were only the changes you need to make in your project to make sure that all the files are accessible inside GitHub. So what to do next now is to go to InfinityFree and then create the actual subdomain or the domain that you want to use for the project. So in your case, you won't have many domains as mine have. So you'll just go, if you're using the root domain that you use to create the account, you'll have it here. So you can just use it by default if you don't have any other project hosted there. But in my case, I already used it, and I'm going to use a different domain. So you'll just click add domain, and then you give it a name. You can either use a custom domain or you can use the one that you've been given by InfinityFree by default. So in your case, you can just use one of them here. But in most of my projects, I like using the default one, since I don't use InfinityFree for production or for serious project. So I'll just click add subdomain, and then you name it. So in my case, I added Yii2. I added Yii254, and then in my domain extension, I changed it to InfinityFree.me. Yeah, this is the one that I used. And then you'll have this, let me just go to home directory to explain. And here you'll have a project created like this one. You'll have a domain added in this list. So the next thing you're supposed to do, let me just go to my notes and explain what is going on there. So you just need to make sure that if you created, this is what you need to understand here is the most challenging part. If you miss this, your project will be deployed in a different directory, which won't be accessed publicly. So if you're using the default domain that you used to create the account, in my case, you'll just know if it is the default one if you go to the account name, and it will be named here. So if you're using this domain for your project, let me just go to the file manager. You'll see where the actual content that will be used for that domain will be stored. If you're using the default domain that you created account with, all the content will be stored inside the htdocs directory. By default, they'll just be stored there. But if you're using an add-on domain, like for example these ones that I added, these are called add-on domains. So these ones will have their own separate file manager. So for example, for the Laravel 254 Waze, if I just go back to the domains, if you can just see it, this one, all its contents will be stored inside Laravel 254.waze.com. So if you go inside it, it will have its own htdocs directory. So in our case, if I just go to the actual nodes, it is defined. If you're using the default domain, you'll just use the path is htdocs. If you're using an add-on domain, you'll have your domain directory, which will be the same as your domain name, and then it will have htdocs as the next subdirectory that you are going to use. And so what we're going to do next is to add our GitHub secrets to GitHub. Make sure this whole project has a repository where you're going to push this code to be stored. So in our case, I already pushed this code to my GitHub repository, and that repository is this one. So I pushed the whole code here. So in your case, if you haven't pushed your code to GitHub, just make sure you create a repository, and then you can either push the code first, or you can just make sure that you have secrets that you're going to use for FTP. So if I just go to my secrets, so what you're going to do, go to your GitHub repository that you have just created. Before even you push the code, you just go to your repository for that project that you created, and then go to the settings part, and you'll just go on the sidebar, you'll just find this part named secrets and variables, and then click actions. So in this part is where you're going to put the secrets. One will be called FTP password, and the other one will be FTP username, and then you'll just add them. So where you'll get these credentials is just inside your InfinityFree account. So what you're going to do, on the sidebar of your main account, you'll find we have FTP details. Just click that, and then you'll have your FTP username and FTP password. So just copy the username, and then go back to your GitHub Actions here, for the project, and then you add a new name. For in our case, we just copy username, and then paste it here. We then add, and then after adding that, you'll be taken back to this page, and then you'll just add the password. In my case, I already added them, and I don't want to repeat the whole process. So after doing that, we just go to our notes, and then I'll show you what you're supposed to do next. Is now to create the actual workflow that you are going to use to deploy the whole project to InfinityFree. What you're going to do, you are going to create a .github directory in your root directory of your project. In my case, I'll just show you, or let me just finish explaining this part, and then I'll go to the project and show you what I did. You need to create a .github directory, and then inside that directory, you create a subdirectory which you'll call it as workflows. And then inside that workflows directory, you'll create a file called, you can just name it anything, but it should end with an extension of .yml. This is the part which is more important for that naming of that file. And then we'll have this code pasted there. So I'll just go to my project and explain to you what I did for the whole thing to work. So I created this directory called .github, and then I created a subdirectory called workflows. And then inside that workflows, what I did, I created a file. I just named it as InfinityFree.yml. So just open that file, and you'll have this code displayed there. So in our case, the only thing you need to change is if you're using an add-on domain, the only thing you need to change is, I'd prefer just naming it as your whole project, the same way as your project is, just to make sure that the name of the actual workflow matches the project, matches where you're going to deploy the actual project. So I like naming mine the same as the name of the domain that I gave the project inside InfinityFree. So in my case, I just named it as Yii254.infinityfree.me. So to select all of this, I'll just Control D to select all of them. For the first two, Yii254.infinityfree.me, those are just for naming, but the part that is being used for the deployment is this part we have the server directory. So this is what I was just explaining before, where if you're using an add-on domain, you need to make sure that you add the name of the add-on domain before htdocs. But if you're using the main domain that you use to create the account, you just need to make sure that you remove this part for your add-on domain. Since we are not using an add-on domain, you're using the main one, so it will use the main htdocs directory inside your project, inside InfinityFree file manager. So in our case, you're using an add-on domain, so I'll just return this inside this. I'll just undo. So this is what you are going to have, but now you need to change the whole of this domain name that I just put here. Just Control D and then name it to the name of your add-on domain that you added inside your InfinityFree account. So after doing that, our project will be ready to be deployed, since we already have FTP credentials added inside our GitHub account, and then we have our actual project having the workflow file that will be used with GitHub to deploy this project inside InfinityFree. So after doing all this, what you're going to do is to just push this code to GitHub. So I did specify on push, this project will start being deployed inside InfinityFree by default. So if you just press commit, and then in my case, I did make changes inside these two files. So I'll just uncomment one of the lines, since I don't want to write any comment, and then I'll just sync the changes. Just press OK. So if you go back inside our project, inside our GitHub, if I go to the section of actions for that project, you will see a workflow which has been activated. If I just click it, and then I already pushed this code to InfinityFree earlier, since if you're doing it for the first time, it will take more than 1 hour. Let me just show you the actual workflow, how long it took to deploy this whole project. If you just go to my actions, and then this was the first action I pushed to GitHub. So if I just show you, it took around it it took 2 hours and 8 minutes. So this is the whole time it took to deploy a basic template for Yii2. I didn't make any changes inside the project. It was just the basic Yii2 template, and it took around 2 hours to deploy everything. So if you are using an actual project that you built which has additional files, it will take more than 2 hours. Yeah. So after doing all that, you'll have your final project being displayed inside InfinityFree. So you can see I am using this custom domain that I added inside InfinityFree, and it is displaying the whole project for InfinityFree that I used for Yii2 Basic. So these projects look the same as our Yii2 application. If I just try to run it, php serve, it is just the same project that I've just deployed inside InfinityFree. So this project is just the same as the one that we have it inside InfinityFree. So this is how we deploy our Yii2 applications to InfinityFree. If you have any question about this process, you can just let me know inside the comment section. So thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.